So we're really excited about this Path to Billion-Dollar Spotlights that we're about to share with you, and appreciate you taking the time this afternoon. So now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our founding partner, Mark Moses.
Hear my name. We couldn't hear the content. I hope it was entertaining and not too embarrassing. Well, Ron, please meet Ron Carson. Ron is a longtime friend. We met in 2010. He actually hired a guy to go interview coaching companies to decide to narrow it down to 2 or 3, and Ron grilled me and then eventually hired me, thankfully, mostly because we've become such great friends. You've had an amazing journey, Ron, and have built truly an amazing business. And you used to be, can I be super blunt?
Yeah.
You used to be an asshole.
Yeah.
And I felt that you wouldn't listen when I or anybody else was talking to you. I thought you were always thinking about what you were going to say next. And over the last couple of years, not only you've had tremendous business success, but you've really evolved as a person. And you're kind. You've just become such a nice guy that I just love to be with. And I look forward to our travels together later in the year. So I hope you'll share with the group how you transform from that super type A guy to this warm, friendly, I can't even believe I'm saying lovable guy, and while still running a multi-billion-dollar business.
Thank you, Mark.
Enjoy your time, and thank you, Ron,
You're welcome.
for being here.
Thank you for having me.
All right, enjoy.
Yeah, Mark is so true. Just a little bit of context here, that Mark, when I was first coached, I was constantly defending whatever it was I was doing. You know, it's easy to defend what we know versus embracing the unknown. Have you ever found yourself in that trap? It's just easier, it's more comfortable. And I remember Mark said, "Ron, you're running a fucking lemonade stand." And I'm like, wow, I never really thought of it as a lemonade stand. But he's like, "You've got so much more potential." And I thought about a quote that I heard years ago. It's like, every single day we get up, we compete against our own potential, and we come up woefully short. The one thing that even in my, I'll call it my, maybe not asshole, might be a little too strong, that I was militant. And I was in the military, everything was ran by a process, and I had expectations that people would give what I was going to give. And so it was really hard, as an entrepreneur. Many of you can really relate to this. And I got to a point where I hated my life. I didn't enjoy my business. I felt trapped in it, but it was the only way I could provide for my family. The journey here has been with a lot of people in this room, matter of fact, and I can't name them all, but it's really, this has been a journey that's been because of all the people I've surrounded myself with. When Mark asked me to give this talk, I was thinking, what should I talk about? I could talk about what the title, dorm room to boardroom. I started this business out of my college dorm room when I was 18. The other one was journey to $1 billion valuation. We had Bain come in. We monetized about 42% of our business with Bain at a little north of $1 billion valuation. But the most significant thing that I could share with you is not that, but it's my pursuit of my own personal freedom. Because I believe there's a lot of people in the room, most of society, matter of fact, that is not okay. Like financially you might be okay, you might have a lot of stuff, but are you really, really, truly okay? So I'm gonna give you a little bit of each. I wanna give you some tactics. Every time I speak, I have a minimum goal that everybody in this room walk out with one actionable idea that you can implement tomorrow, easy, no cost or low cost. And if I run into you 6 months from now, you're gonna run, that idea worked exactly the way you said it would. But my bigger goal is to break you out of the prison of conventional thinking. We're in a society today where, and I even find myself being lulled in to letting other people do our thinking. There's not as much original thinking and curiosity today. So let me give you a real quick version of my childhood, which brings me up to today, because it is pertinent to some of the advice I'm going to give today. Is I grew up on a farm just north of Omaha. We call Nebraska the center of the universe. If you've been there, you'll see what I mean. And I was a farmer. My parents were farmers. I thought I was going to be a farmer. When I was 17 years of age, my father and mother, during the farming crisis, went broke. So just imagine a world where you thought this was what you were going to do. Interest rates in 1982 were 21.5%. And I saw my dad cry for the first time. And the only time I've ever seen my father cry. And like, holy shit, this is serious. What am I going to do? So I was in the library reading Money Magazine. It said top professions of the future. The top of the list, become a certified financial planner. I thought, you know what, I'm going to do that. That sounds good. That's a good change. I had a little bit of money I was a little entrepreneur when I was younger. That's what I want to do. And by the way, just a quick footnote to that. A few years ago, my wife and I love to go to the Napa Valley Wine Auction. If you've not been, it's a great experience. I quit doing it during COVID. And I was at a pre-party, and a lady introduced me that I knew to a friend of hers, and we got to talking. She goes, you're from Nebraska and you're in financial services. How did that happen? I said, well, I read this article in Money Magazine. She had the weirdest look on her face, and she goes, I was at Money Magazine. I wrote that article. And I'm like, well, then I owe you my career and where I'm at today. So this journey to a $1.1 billion valuation. Let me talk to you about what I refer to as S-curve explosions. The way an S-curve works, some of you know this, but I'll just quick review, is you build, and then all of a sudden you just explode. You build capabilities, you build connections, you build know-how, you surround yourself with an incredible team, and then you have this amazing growth. Now, some people never have a true S-curve explosion, and some can repeat themselves over and over and over again. And the real difference is just the belief if you can. Bezos has a great book called Invent and Wonder. If you haven't read it, I strongly recommend it. And it's just about, just coming up with a few really good ideas. You heard about Jesse, serial entrepreneur. Fail fast. Don't be afraid of failure. View failure as a learning experience, and sometimes your S-curves aren't going to explode. But I do find businesses today where they get in that flat spot, and it's either a period we're going to reinvigorate and reposition and rethink where we're at for the next leg up, or we start this gradual decline down, telling ourselves we're really preparing for the next leg up, but we're starting this decline. In today's world is sometimes, like Cyrus was talking about his spin, you can't pull out of. In the 1950s, you know what the average life of an S&P 500 company was? Any guesses? 70 years. What do you think it is today? 12. 12. Think of that. 12 years. Do you think it's going up or going down? It's going down. It's going down fast, which puts a premium on AQ, adaptability quotient. So I'm going to share with you some of the key items that really led from that dead broke kid in my dorm room at 11 Able in Lincoln, Nebraska, scared shitless about how I was going to provide for myself because I had no support because my parents didn't have anything. Early on, I was big on goals and really like blueprinting. I'll call it blueprinting now, but I listened to this speaker named Tom Hopkins. Probably don't know who that is to this day, but a few might. And he said, if you could vividly imagine it, ardently desire it, you can have anything. And so I would go to the end and work backwards. And Steve Sandusky was my partner, and we developed a coaching business, and we evolved this as something we call blueprinting. Live your life by design, not by default. When I get to the end of my life, I want to say I'm glad I did, not that I wish I had. I don't want to have any regret. So I said to Steve, I got this great idea to really impress upon this idea of going to the end and working backwards, because in the blueprinting process, we have people write their eulogy. Let's have one of my clients who's in the funeral home business, we'll bring a coffin into our conference room, and then, because we also have a coaching business for financial advisors, we'll have these advisors write their eulogy, and then we'll play some music, we'll lay them in the coffin, take pictures, listen to it, record it. He goes, that's got to be the worst idea I've ever heard. And I go, well, in those days, like Mark said, I was a bit of an asshole. I said, well, let's just do it anyway. So we had 60-some people that were at this conference, and 15 decided to go through, and I was first. And I get in the coffin, and I'm laying there, and I got my eyes shut, and taking some pictures, and I text them to my sister. She didn't think that was too funny, by the way. But think of the power of this. First of all, how many people do you know, show of hands, that have gotten out of a coffin? Well, you all know me, so yeah, you do. But it doesn't happen very often. And here's what I underestimated. The power of truly going to the end. Truly going to the end and going, how do I want this to end? And then you can come backwards with goals. 20, I had 25, 20, 15, 10, 5, 3, 1. And every year I repeated this process. So go to the end, work backwards, write your eulogy. It sounds simple. It's really hard to do because you don't want to bullshit yourself. One of the things we ask in blueprinting is, if I aren't so afraid, I would, ... There's lots of questions that are hard to answer. And by the way, if you're interested, we're one of the sponsors here, more than happy to give you this template to actually go through and do it. But incredible growth. The next was systemization. Even great companies today don't do a great job with repeatable processes. Repeatable processes. Michael Gerber. Anybody read The E-Myth before? Great book. I met Michael in Aspen, Colorado. There was 3 of us sitting at the Little Nell right after he came out with his book in 1995. And he was talking about systemization. He said, with great systems, you can have ordinary people and you get extraordinary results. Man, I came home and I drank that Kool-Aid, and man, we're going to systematize everything, because I found myself making the same decisions over and over and over. And the team would come to me, it's like, let's just have processes for around everything, how we manage a relationship, how we open an account. And now we need to make an adjustment, we can. But here's where Michael was wrong. He said you can take ordinary people and get extraordinary results. It's not true. You still need extraordinary people. But I can tell you this, without good systems, you can take extraordinary people and get really ordinary results. So just the opposite can and will happen, and I've seen this from the trenches. Number 3 breakthrough, and this was the single biggest one I've ever had until my last one, which I'm going to share with you at the end. And that was hire the best people you can find and get out of their way. It's easy to say it, but it's really hard to do it. One of my mentors, his name's Howard Hawk. He's a self-made billionaire in Omaha, Nebraska. He didn't like the way things were going at a company that he worked at. You might have heard of this company, Enron. And he left in his 50s to start this business from scratch. And Howard and I served on a board together. And so I said, hey, can I take you to lunch once a quarter just to pick your brain? And so the very first lunch, I'm like, Howard, what's the one thing that most led to your success? He said, 2 things. And they'll give me 1. I got to give you 2. I said, all right, 2. He said, sell off the wild-eyed upside and always protect your downside. Now think about that. Always sell off the wild-eyed expectations and upside, right? We get so caught up within these huge things that can potentially happen. But he said, protect your downside and the upside will always take care of itself. The other is, hire the best people you can find and get the hell out of their way. Now, all of us being control freaks, entrepreneurs, many founders in the room, that's really hard to do, getting out of their way. And admittedly, I thought I was doing it, but I really wasn't doing it, because I would hire, delegate, micromanage. That didn't work very well. And many of you have already figured this out, but if you haven't, for me personally, no one was going to do it the way I was going to do it or as good as I was going to do it. But that meant I could do it and maybe it's 20% better, at least in the short run. But what I found by surrounding myself with really good people, try to make yourself the dumbest person at your company, and I've done that, is that they'll do it 80% and then pretty soon 100% and pretty soon 200 and 300 and 400% better because they're more passionate, they got more bandwidth. And then you got 10 people doing that, and then you got 100 people doing that, and you got 1,000 people doing that. And it really builds incredible capabilities within an organization. Passion prospecting. This was a biggie for me. Today in financial services, advisors are always looking for new clients. Paul West is here. I know some of you actually work with Paul. And Paul does this beautifully. Passion prospecting. I didn't want to do a seminar. I didn't want to do a direct mail piece. I had a love. I love to fly airplanes. I love to climb mountains. Love to drink wine, or at least I did in those days. And I thought, why don't I take my core group of my best clients that I have these, because I don't believe in work-life balance and doing this or that. To me, it's all life. I was having a conversation at dinner with somebody. I call it life harmony because I don't want there to be a difference between my life and my passion. The people that I do business with, I love. I love talking to them. I love seeing them. I love doing things with them. And think of the power of they know people that if you share a passion with somebody that they share a passion with, they share it. It's forever. The number of clients you can bring, and it's just a fun way to do business. This is one that was really difficult for me. And that is, if you look at financial services today, most of the value that's being created is around luck. It truly is. If you really knew the truth about how most financial services firms are running, and we coach 1,400 of them, we have 20,000 alumni, and when they come to us, they're as surprised as you are as to how you're doing. Sometimes you have an advisor that you're sitting down with and you say, hey, I want to customize your portfolio for you. Oh, that sounds great. What kind of team do you have to do that? Do you have much energy? You know, if I'm a client, I want to really think, is this really truly in my best interest? And I about blew my business up in 1999 when I had two clients I was playing golf with. And one of them was like on the third hole and he hits his shot and he's like, man, Ron, I can't believe how much money we've made this year. I'm like, God, I wish you wouldn't have said that. Because the other client, which was a referral of his, same demographic, same everything, he kind of looks at me and one hit his ball right. Doug and I both hit our ball left, so we're walking over. He goes, I'm not up anywhere close to that, am I? And I didn't have a great answer. It's like I was one of those advisors I'm talking about right now. We had a lot of randomness going on out there. So two things that we did. One, we really got process around investment strategy. So the message for your business is, what's a process so you can deliver that consistent service? Very closely related to systemization, but there's a big difference, and this is it. It's also align yourself with people that have a true alignment of interest. Today in financial services, do you realize the majority of financial services is not required by law to put your interests ahead of their own? Is that crazy? To me, it's embarrassing. And you had a speaker earlier today that illegally did it. Some was legal, but it's still going on. And it's not just the people that are, quote unquote, breaking laws. A lot of this is legal. It's called a suitability standard. So ask your advisor, are you operating under the fiduciary standard or the suitability standard? Because the suitability standard means you got to be suitable for the investment, but it doesn't have to, they don't have to put their interests ahead of your own. As a fiduciary, required to put your interests ahead of their own. And what really happens is magic in this RIA world, because all of a sudden, you can have true alignments. And let me talk about the nimbleness. You know, in the financial crisis last one, all these homes, you can go out, we were able to buy homes and not have a front end and a back end. Or today in this market, the reinsurance rates are incredible. But if you've got someone putting and packaging this stuff together and a product, it's not true fiduciary type product, there's so many expenses, fees, ways that they make money whether you make money or not, it really doesn't put you on the same side of the table. So you don't want to be across the table with your advisor And I imagine any of your companies, you want to sit on the same side of the table. Redefining. This was a breakthrough for us as well. Solved a problem. That was talked about earlier today by a couple of our speakers. Solve a major problem. And financial services is very inefficient. The market doesn't want to pay for 50,000 trading departments, 50,000 compliance departments, 50,000 marketing departments. Yet there's not been a consolidation. So this S-curve was, how do we Amazon the experience? How do we build technologies? How do we, to what we call the third dimension of trust, anticipate a client's need before they even know they have it? And it really came through around data warehouse. Today, most companies run from one application to the other, but you have a rich data, and I would, all of you, thinking about data is going to be the new world currency. Data is where it's going to be at, and control and own the data and your client's data so you can have applications that run in that data to make the experience richer. We're in a convenience. It used to be great service, and everybody still wants great service, but we want convenience. And we're not willing to sacrifice quality for that convenience. So when you think about what you're going to deliver, I always use Amazon or Netflix as an example. Super simple, an amazing client experience, but then the user on the other side has a great experience, and it's really easy to understand and navigate. Massive S-curve explosion. And then scaling the business, building innovation, and really this is around a PE and culture. I know some of you have PE firms that have invested in your company. Matter of fact, Rob Follows of STS is actually here. I remember the very, very first meeting we had at Mark's house. Believe it or not, that's how small it was. I met Rob, and he has a company called Success to Significance. What I loved about that was this really called to my heart around how he gives back, but also wants to create this philanthropic capital. But I was afraid of private equity. I'd heard all these awful things, and how they just control your business and they're going to gouge it. For me personally, private equity was the least expensive capital I've ever taken because of the capabilities that came with it. So if you're thinking about this, really rethink it. I'm not saying there's not bad ones out there, but get that true alignment of interest. And here's the other thing. When our first PE firm came in, they had all these prefs and all these things they wanted to do. I said, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for someone to stand in this shoulder to shoulder. I know I've grown the company as far as I can with my capabilities. I'm looking for ideas. Really don't need the capital, but I want ideas. And so they came in, they tenfolded their exit. They came in with us at around 100 million. We exited when Bain took them out at 1.1 billion. I had outgrown them. Bain comes in. And by the way, if you run a process, here's what I recommend you do. A lot of people will come in and say, want to be your partner, and there's like a term sheet that they'll send out. What we required when we filtered it down to like 10 or 11, I think the final number is 11, we asked them to make a presentation. Here's our business. Tell us what you would do to really, not just incremental, but exponential growth. And my gosh, did we learn a lot. Think of all these firms come in, spent all this time, all this energy, presented in some case 3 times, and we learned. Bain came in, and it was really a clear winner for us, and they're pushing us in a couple of areas we never would have done without them. So if you really want to get to the next level, private equity not only brings the capabilities, but they also have an incredible network. So just don't rule them out. And then the culture is key too. One of the things that was important to me, anybody read Simon Sinek's The Infinite Game? I really strongly recommend, like, what game are you playing? Are you playing the finite game or the infinite game? I've publicly said, when I did the deal with Bain, I'm keeping control. And you can negotiate, you can own a lot less than 50% and still have control of your company. I control the board, I control the outcome. I made a commitment to my partners, I'm gonna be a 100-year firm. And I hope well beyond a 100-year firm. What's really cool is when you're playing the infinite game, you get to make totally different decisions when you're competing with people that are playing the finite game. The way you attract people and the culture you build in an environment that's really it's hard to attract top talent. Top talent really doesn't want to join you and then be sold and then resold again. And it just causes a lot of disruption in their life. So culture and PE, don't be afraid of it. this 100-year firm playing the infinite game. There's a shot of our Bain partners as well as my leadership team when we actually completed the deal about a year ago, last August. Now I want to share my maximum goal, and that is to have you go, man, is there something more to this guy? Is there something more that's really helped him get to where he's at, but really getting ready to launch me into this next S-curve? Everybody in the room know who Ray Dalio is at Bridgewater? Worth $19 billion, right? And I was listening to one of his podcasts. He's being interviewed. And Ray said, you know, when I first started my business, I was standing on this cliff, and I could see way the other side. I could see exactly where I wanted to get. But it meant I had to go down, fight through the jungle, climb out the other side. And I did that. And I looked back, and I had this huge realization is, I love the jungle. I want to be in the jungle. That's why you buy your companies back. That's why you get bored. We want the validation, right? We want to get a valuation. We want to get a monetization. It's good for our ego. But also Ray is a transcendental meditator. And I'm going to get a little woo on you here, but I'm going to tell you, Mark said the last couple of years, it's been really the last 6 or 7 years. I was a kid growing up. I grew up in a manic depressive mother, alcoholic father, all kinds of dysfunction in our house. I just didn't know it was any different than that. I just thought, until I got older in life, that's how everybody grew up. Then the bankruptcy, that was huge, you know, tremendous anxiety for me. So throughout my life, up until probably 7 or 8 years ago, I had all this financial success. I had all these things. And people on the outside in would look in and go, man, he's got to have like the best life ever. We have a saying in my YPO forum, the happiest people we know, we don't know very well. Think about that. And that was me, and I knew it was me. And they would say it, and we would laugh about it, but I'm thinking, you guys don't really know me. And in a forum, we're supposed to share everything. And I couldn't bring it to myself to say, I'm sad. I feel anxiety, I feel pressure, I don't feel any happiness. I worked with a therapist. He's incredible. I call him my cosmic father today. And what I had realized is a couple of things. Is first of all, mental wellness and mental illness is a huge issue in our society today. And it's still one that has a terrible stigma attached to it. But we all have brains. We all have this space here. And for me, I was running from scarcity. I was running from those ghosts I could never outrun, ever. No matter how much I had, was I going to be okay? And Karosh, my cosmic father's like, yeah. I spent a week intensive with him, and I was like, I'm going to be okay. Then I started reading books about non-traditional therapies. Michael Pollan has a book, How to Change Your Mind. And I said, Karosh, should I be considering some of this? And he goes, absolutely. And I'm like, well, then why didn't you share it before? He says, it calls you when it's ready for you. So what I want to share now is this metamorphosis I was able to go through in my life. And I was telling Mark backstage, I feel incredibly happy. I took happiness. I would have momentary states of happiness, like a birthday, a vacation, want a big deal. But I wanted it to become a trait. And so working with, and I know we're all we're tough, testosterone, type A people, we don't want to admit that we need some help. And so being able to admit that and dealing with a lot of trauma, and by the way, we know today, trauma goes back 7 generations. Genetically can be transferred. Harvard did a study on this with mice to prove it. They would shock the mother with the babies and feed them and shock them when they were eating, and they had a control group. And for 3 generations following that, the mice that had been shocked, even those that had only genetically been shocked, not real-time been shocked, wouldn't eat where the others would. So we know that this actually does transfer. And I think we all have trauma. I had some that I didn't even know that was even there. It came out. I had to go to my mom and say, did this really, really, truly happen? And the other is, in society today, this is not in this room, but people are struggling with Am I going to be okay financially? The stats are staggering. Most people can't withstand a $500 unexpected bill. It's crazy. But let's just assume they solve for that. With Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you're not going to ascend above their physiological and safety unless you get that solved. And some of you will ascend, even if you have a lot of traumas that you're not going to deal with. I've had advisors and people I try to mentor say, I just don't want to end up Pandora's box. Well, guess what? It's there. It's holding you back, even if you don't realize it. So I'd say open your mind, educate yourself, do your own thinking, because there's a world out there that is not only beautiful, but you'll meet some of the most incredible people, and your capabilities will be unleashed. We have infinite potential. I mean infinite potential. There's nobody in this room that can't have everything that you want. But I like what Jesse said, the spiritual billionaire. It doesn't matter. You can have all this stuff, isn't going to provide any happiness in your life. I'm a living example of that. 36 years of age, I had more money than I could ever spend, and I was sad and felt no joy. So getting rid of that trauma. Today, our company is thriving. I will tell you, we're barely just getting started. We will 10 or 20-fold our business within my lifetime. And the reason it gets me excited to get out of bed every day is the impact that we can have. Carson exists today, give people fresh water. We have nearly a billion people in the world that have access to fresh water. 2 billion have food insecurity or starving to death every night. They don't have education. And I'm not up here as a liberal. I'm saying there's some basic human things that we can do, and we're going to supply it as a private company, and we're going to help people. Mental wellness is a big deal. Talk about it with the people you love. Talk about it in the companies that you're leading, because it needs to be talked about more than it's being talked about. And there's a way to get clear up the top to total transcendence. A lot of people don't know this. If I ask most of you, Maslow's hierarchy of needs ended at self-actualization. He actually died before he published there was another level, and it's total transcendence. It's how you live in your local and your higher self, both at the same time. It's a beautiful, beautiful place to be. So adapt to what's going on today. The opportunities have never been greater to succeed, nor the distractions to cause you to fail. Just think about that. The opportunity's never been greater. Think of the S&P 500, 12 years going to 10, probably going to 8 or 7, because we have information, we have choice, and be on the right side of the infinite. Play the infinite game, and it'll give you a huge advantage over all your competitors. Like Darwin said, it's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent, but the species most adaptable to change. Get rid of what you think you know, quit defending what you're comfortable with, and embrace the unknown. Thank you very much.